What do the end of Casablanca and the end of Baylor football's losing streak have in common? They're both the beginnings of a beautiful friendship. This is Locked On Baylor.
You are Locked On Baylor, your daily podcast on the Baylor Bears. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello there, Bears fans, and welcome to another episode of Locked On Baylor, brought to you by FanDuel and part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it is your team every day. I'm your host, Cam Stewart of ESPN Central Texas and the Cam Show on YouTube, powered by Rogue Media Sports Network. Appreciate you making it your first listen today and every day, as we're still celebrating that win a little bit against Tech. And we're going to hear from a couple of players in just a minute here about this new dynamic, quarterback-receiver dynamic. You might already know who it is, but why that's going to be key for Baylor to get wherever they need to get to at the end of this season. Also, one of the reasons for Baylor's offensive success is actually Jeff Grimes, kind of. And let's look forward a little bit, because this schedule got pretty open after a big-time Baylor victory in Lubbock against Tech. There we go. All that and more coming up on this episode of Locked On Baylor. Let's start with the combo that was ever present in this blowout against Tech. Of course, that is Sawyer Robertson and Josh Cameron. And boy, have they had a connection. I mean, from game one that Sawyer was out there, those two had that connection. And one of the big reasons why they came back against BYU was Sawyer to Josh Cameron. They connected on 2 touchdowns in that game. They connected 3 times for touchdowns against Tech. Sawyer threw 5. Josh Cameron caught 3. He caught a real important one right before halftime. Like, these guys are simpatico. We see it all the time with, obviously, every quarterback has their favorite receiver, right? And specifically, you see it when a backup comes in or like a rookie comes in the NFL, where there's a guy they've just got it with right away. And the rest, they come together, they fall in line, and eventually a good quarterback makes connections with all of them. But at the beginning, and most importantly, there is that one. All right. It was Brady with whomever. It was Manning with, Marvin Harrison. It's Mahomes and Kelsey. And at Baylor right now, it is Sawyer Robertson and Josh Cameron. And they were 2 huge reasons why Baylor had that blowout victory in Lubbock on Saturday. And they will be big factors for them going forward if they do want to play postseason football. Here is what Josh Cameron said after the game about that relationship with his new quarterback.
Josh, how tight is y'all's connection that you have here with Sawyer?
No, it's super tight, you know what I'm saying? Just the ability for him to just trust me out there, just shows a lot. For him to just throw the ball up to me, and just kind of, I want to have his back, basically. Whenever the ball's in the air, it's my ball, it's nobody else's ball, because it's just the relationship that we have, you know what I'm saying? I want to make him right at all times, so real tight.
I want to have his back. I want to make sure he's right. That is a guy who is a veteran in the system, a walk-on in Josh Cameron, who turned scholarship player this year, who has been through the battles and has seen another guy in Sawyer Robertson who's a little bit younger, but who's been through the battles too. Those are 2 teammates right there. And I know they're all over this roster, good teammates, but that is so exciting to see for a program that struggled offensively the last few years, struggled in passing offense for a while now, to see a quarterback receiver have that kind of a connection on and off the field. It rocks. And another part that I didn't show in there is when Parker Ream from Fox 44 starts telling Josh Cameron about some of his accomplishments this year. Josh kind of has this humble smile, and Sawyer next to him is like pounding him like on his thigh, like, let's go, man. Hey, that's you. You did that. And it's bringing the best out of both of them on the field. Sawyer Robertson has turned into, honestly, the last couple of weeks, one of the best quarterbacks in the Big 12. Right up there, genuinely. And if he plays like that the rest of the season, Baylor will make a charge for a bowl game. We're going to talk about that later on in the show. But Josh Cameron has come on and looks like a guy who could be an NFL player. This kid was a walk-on. He was paying tuition, last year, 2 years ago? And now we're talking about this kid could play in the league. He's showing that much. He's physical. He's great in kick coverage and punt returns. Like, that's how you stay on the field and stay on an NFL roster. He does it on special teams. He does it on offense. He did it in the slot. He's done it on the outside. The kid can be plugged in pretty much anywhere, and he makes plays. And it's wild that he came in as a walk-on. But what Parker was telling him about was his 3 touchdowns on Saturday brought him up to 7 on the year. He's the first receiver for Baylor to have more than 6 since Tyquan Thornton in 2021. I know 3 years ago doesn't seem like a long time, but we've seen a lot of football since then, and 6 is not a crazy number. Josh Cameron now at 7 through 7 games. That's pretty impressive. 6 in a season, that's pretty solid. 7 through 7 games is pretty good. So we're talking about him being near the top 10 list of single season touchdown catches for the Bears. Like, he is in that upper echelon with guys like Thornton and Mims and KD Cannon. Like, he's getting up there, which really just goes to show how special he has been this season. And obviously the Bears are going to need both of these guys to continue this momentum. But you want to talk about guys who have both been through the battles, right? Josh Cameron, the walk-on, and has been here through thick and thin, quite literally, the last few years. Sawyer Robertson, not the walk-on, but the kid that comes in through the portal to be a backup. And like they mentioned on the broadcast on Saturday, he's been through 5 quarterback battles since he's been in college, and he's lost every one of them. I compare him to the first thought I had when hearing that was, how many elections did Abraham Lincoln lose? Hear me out. He lost a ton. He kept losing elections. The presidential election was like the second one he'd won in his whole life. He was not this guy who just kept going linear, one after the other. Growth is not always linear. In fact, it rarely is. And that's what we're seeing from Sawyer Robertson. Sawyer Robertson is our Abraham Lincoln. And these guys have found each other because they have been through the trenches, and they know how important each play is and how valuable their time is out there on that field, and how fleeting that time can be out there on that field. And again, that's not to say some of these other guys don't know, but you're talking about 2 guys who have been through a lot of battles and are now battling through together. And there are plenty of battles still to be fought throughout this season, but you have a versatile receiver like that with a quarterback who can get it to him at any point in the field, and they're out there doing it for each other and trusting each other. I'm in on that. I am in on that. And you've seen how much Sawyer has gotten so many receivers involved, pass catchers involved. Bryson Washington, we didn't know he was a pass catcher. Now we do because of Sawyer Robertson. And that's not a shot at DeQuan Finn. That's really the last couple of years with the offense that they've run and the quarterbacks that they've had. It hasn't felt like at times that you've had 4 or 5 weapons out there that can go out in there and catch the football. With Sawyer Robertson calling the signals and guys like Josh Cameron getting open all the time, it does feel like that. And Sawyer can really spread the love, but certainly Josh Cameron is getting the bear hug at the end of the day when it comes to the targets. But he has been tremendous in both phases of the game that he plays in. And for 2 guys who you didn't have as key difference makers on this team before the season, that's who you're going to be rolling with offensively. And you can add Bryson Washington in there as a third of 3 guys who you didn't have a lot of expectations for this year. That's your 3-headed monster, and they certainly showed it against Tech on Saturday. Speaking of that running back, there is maybe an old OC who Baylor can thank for some of his success on Saturday against Tech. We'll tell you where that fits in coming up after this. But first, it's that time of the week, Bears fans. Time to recognize our Roy Player of the Week. So far this season, we've pooled over 20,000 to support players on Roy. Yes, it is Roy. I've been saying ROI. I've been corrected. Micro deposits lead to massive change. With the Roy app, you can directly support the athletes you love, ensuring that all the funds go to that player you choose. Because unlike collectives, you know exactly where the support is going. And you're going to receive exclusive content, things like personal videos, updates after the season. And the best part is it's risk-free. If that athlete transfers or they don't deliver, you get your money back, okay? This week, I am supporting Bryson Washington. Look, I've already picked Sawyer. I've already picked Josh Cameron. They were both great. So I wish I could give it to the whole offensive line, but I can't. It's got to be one player. So I'm giving it to Bryson Washington. I just pitched in $100 from Roy, and I'd love you to join me. Even $10, that makes a difference. Let's show Bryson the love. Keep him connected to our school. You pay today, celebrate tomorrow. Your support is going to set up the Bears for success. Plus, I don't want you to miss out on Roy's exciting giveaway. All right, you can win 2 tickets to a game in November. Just download Roy, create an account, enter the referral code Locked On, and you're entered. But Cam, I'm already on Roy, like you said. Well, any contribution to an athlete's campaign also gets you entered automatically. No purchase necessary. So download Roy now and join the NIL game with no subscriptions and no fees. And be sure to check us out. Instagram, Facebook, X, @Roy_return on you for some more info. Roy, support the players, change the game. The passing part was great, right? Sawyer Robertson, 5 touchdowns. Most of Baylor quarterbacks had in 9 years. Josh Cameron, 3 touchdown receptions. He was a beast. That was fun. But what really set Baylor in motion, especially early in this game when the passing game did not have rhythm, was the ground game. And I said it at the end of last week as more or less wishful thinking. Like, if Baylor's going to get this thing going, and if they want to beat a good team like Tech, they got to run the ball. And it's something they haven't done all year. They have not established the run, whether it be the backs or the choice of backs or the offensive line or the, being behind the sticks, whatever you want to attribute it to. They have not established the run this year, but for that Air Force game. Other than that, no, nil, nada. Hadn't been there. But Saturday it was there. And I hope it's not fleeting time because they ran the heck out of it. 255 yards on the ground is the most they've had this season. And also the most balanced they've been. 274 through the air, 255 on the ground. They couldn't even get to 255 total yards earlier this year against Utah. Now they're running for that and throwing for a lot more. Throwing and running for more than that number. And it's been tremendous. Obviously, Bryson Washington was a huge part of that. But the Bears might have gotten an assist from an old friend, an old fella you and I know as former offensive coordinator Jeff Grimes, now at Kansas, because here's what Dave Aranda said about the key to their success running the ball on Saturday.
Makes it easier when you run the ball. I think that people have to be able to respect it. I think we put in the stretch play or the wide zone play during the bye week, and it's interesting. We'd run that for so long here, or it seems like so long, and when we put it in, no one knew what to do, and so we had to teach it all over again and everything else. But you saw there's multiple times where we ran the stretch play, and we're able to crease the defense, and we're such a double team lock zone deal, and so the linebacker fits are to fall back to the back. And so, if the back's always this way, the fits are always falling here. But if they're falling here and we go this way, then there's a crease right there. And that happened multiple times. And so we'll see people adjust to it. But I think the ability to have both runs that are this way and runs that are this way helps out our O-line. And so we'll continue with that.
I know there were plenty of you watching and listening and shuddering when you heard wide zone. Oh no. I thought Halloween was another week away. What does he mean wide zone? What? I know. It was back. And it worked. It worked to perfection. You saw it a couple of times. I think that early big-time Bryson Washington run would have been that stretch play. So how about that after the struggles last year offensively, especially running the ball against Tech, by the way. Remember 17 rushing yards last year. And for the struggles that Kansas has had so far this year, and I know it's fun to make it a meme, but the Jeff Grimes play, it worked. It worked. And I think part of it needs to be attributed to the fact that Baylor also was in a rhythm passing the ball too, specifically in that second half. And that opens up things in the running lane. And that's where it should work with Jake Spavital's offense. But so it's from the grimy playbook. And it needed a little bit better circumstances here at Baylor, and it probably needed a change coming into this year, right? I'm not arguing that, but it's just so funny to me that part of the finally having success running the ball was taking a page out of the book of the guy you had in here last year. But it worked really well with with Bryson Washington specifically in this week. I mean, he's the big performer on the ground. He goes 10 carries, just 10 carries, but gets 116 yards, almost 12 yards a carry on like a decent sample size there. Obviously 2 touchdowns mixed in too. Dawson Pendergrass got some touches, 7 for 36, which is over 5 yards a carry. Richard Reese gave them some valuable touches, a couple in the passing game, not necessarily just like turning it around and handing off to him. He had that one catch in the 2-minute drill before halftime of I think it was 24, 25 yards that helped set them up for that touchdown right before half. I have been critical of, hey, you need to pick a guy or two and roll with it. And it seems the last 2 weeks, and obviously specifically in this game because it was more successful, they have done that. It was Bryson Washington and Dawson Pendergrass. They were getting they ran it 33 times in this game, and those guys accounted for just more than half, 17 of it. And you mix in some of those jet plays, Monterey Baldwin got one. Jamal Bell got one late in the game. Daquan Finn got a couple of carries too. But those are your bell cows. And we have seen it now twice with Bryson Washington this season. I mean, he should be your number one back. He's the only back that Baylor has that has gotten 100 yards this year, and he's now done it twice. And this is what is going to be key going forward, because like I mentioned in the last segment, like we know Sawyer can throw the ball. We know Sawyer can potentially win a game on his arm alone. And we know that he spreads the love, but as he was having good games before this and they weren't winning. And part of that reason was they couldn't run it. They couldn't establish the run. They were too one-dimensional. And they became an easy team to defend. They were a very difficult team to defend in this game Saturday against Tech. And a big reason why was the run game. And therefore, a big reason why was a page out of Jeff Grimes' playbook. I didn't think I'd be saying that. I didn't think we would be talking about a Baylor blowout win at Tech and giving some credit to Jeff Grimes. But obviously, plenty of credit needs to go to Jake Spavital or Matt Spavital, depending on what you're listening to on the broadcast. But I thought Spav had a really good game plan in this one. And I know there are some fans out there that have really not loved the play calls. I've been truly okay with how he's managed games throughout this. I remember that BYU game where, as bad as the score was at halftime, I thought they really only had 1 or 2 bad calls in the whole first half. And other than that, I thought it was a lack of execution. And that's where we walk the fine line of how much goes on the coaches, how much goes on the players. But I think Spavital's done a good job. I thought this offense would click a little bit sooner than it did, but it's clicking. You saw it in the second half against BYU. You saw it in the first half against Iowa State, and they hadn't put it together. Well, at Tech, they put it together. And I know Tech's front four sucks. Like, it does. I get that. And overall, their defense is not great. But this was a team that had made some things happen on the defensive end to win games. Like, they went into Arizona and held them under 20 points, and they won that game. They won a couple shootouts in there, so it doesn't look like a great defense, but they had improved in Big 12 play after the disaster against Abilene Christian, the disaster up in Pullman, and their first game, I think, in the Big 12 was Cincinnati, and that was high scoring. And since then, they had found their stride a little bit defensively, and you knocked them out of that stride, thanks mainly to the run game, which led to such easy passes. I'll tell you what my favorite drive of this game was before we look ahead at the schedule. It was in the third quarter, actually probably went into I think it was the last play of the third and the first few plays of the fourth. They threw a pass out for Bryson Washington for a couple of yards, and then they went Bryson Washington for 6, Bryson Washington for 16, Bryson Washington for 34, and then screen pass, Monterey Baldwin, untouched, end zone, 30 yards out, front flip, game over. Like, that is just crushing a team's will in there. Power run just enough so that you could slip out a screen pass to the fastest player on the team, and we're done. That's all she wrote. Sawyer doesn't even need to look downfield one time, and they put the ball in the end zone. That's impressive. That's impressive. The schedule coming up, Not that impressive, which is a great thing for Baylor. What does it mean for these Bears, and what can we expect? That's coming up next on Locked On Baylor. But first, I got to reach out to you, the NFL fan. All right, you want a big return like Josh Cameron in the punt game? How about a big return early in the season on FanDuel, America's #1 sports book? When you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats. You can view live play-by-play and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. You'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet at FanDuel.com. Once again, let me say that again. You get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet at FanDuel.com. That's FanDuel.com. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. All right, I know you guys were thinking this as soon as that clock hit 0 on Saturday, because I had a bunch of people in the post-game commenting on it. Cam, look at that schedule after this. Because I did a segment of like, hey, they have played the best teams in the Big 12 so far. I know it's 3 losses in a row coming into this, and I don't want to make excuses, but you had played what you thought was going to be the best team in the Big 12, Utah, which has fallen off. I mean, I guess they were definitely a different team when you played them earlier in the season in a good way. Colorado is in the thick of it. They're not the best team in the Big 12, but they're absolutely in the thick of it. And then you also faced BYU, Iowa State, and then Tech, who was tied for the lead in the Big 12 when that game kicked off on Saturday. Now you look at the schedule and you're like, oh boy, there could be something here. And I'm already seeing 8-4 predictions. I am seeing people who we were all freaking out a couple weeks ago. And some of those people are saying, I could see this team win 6 games in a row. I don't know that I can go that far, but it's a very favorable schedule. And this schedule might be a big helping hand towards saving Dave Aranda's job. Because before I get into this, like, it doesn't change much. Like, if Baylor doesn't make a bowl game, it's still a really bad look on the head coach, who would then have 4 losing seasons in 5 years, right? But what you could ask for schedule-wise was this, to give you some momentum towards the end of the season. You've got Oklahoma State coming in on Saturday, and they are in a bad way, and we'll talk about that plenty this week. They are really struggling on both sides of the ball. They thought they had something at quarterback last week with Rangel. Rangel gets hurt. Like there is a lot of bad juju around Oklahoma State right now, and they're 0-4 in the conference. And you have a chance to really make that worse for them, make that limbo way worse for them by beating them on Saturday. Such begins Baylor's first issue, which is winning at home. Hadn't won a home conference game in, I believe it's exactly 2 years as you listen to this or watch this on October 22nd. I believe it was October 22nd, 2022, when they beat Kansas 35-23, a game which they led, I believe, 28-3, and then was cut to 28-23 in the last 5 minutes of the game. But they did win. And since then, they have not been able to win a conference game at home. Or they at least have not done it. I don't know if they've been able to, but they have not won it. That's been a huge woe for Baylor in the Dave Aranda era outside of 2021, was winning at home. So that's where it needs to start. They need to get in the right mentality, because you've got 2 winnable games the next 2 weeks at home. Oklahoma State, homecoming, big deal. We know how big Baylor's homecoming is, officially the oldest in the world and the largest homecoming parade in the world. No big deal. And then after that, it's just been announced, 7 p.m. kickoff, November 2nd, against TCU, blackout, honoring the 2013 and 14 Big 12 championship teams, the one true champ in 2014, by the way. That becomes a huge game. You'll also be wearing the anthracite uniforms. If Baylor can win on Saturday against Oklahoma State, then you've got something in that game. In terms of an atmosphere, a buzz, like that's going to be real. And TCU, I'm sure, will have plenty of fans there, because they just scored a big win over Utah, and they've got Tech this weekend, so they could be on a roll as well, when both teams looked like they wanted to fire their coach in the middle of the season. So it starts with Saturday, because look, I have, how many times in my tenure being a Baylor fan and yours as well, have we said, oh, if they just win this game, how big is this next game going to be? We literally said it earlier this year. If they had beaten Colorado, you get big noon for the BYU game. We say it all the time, and then Baylor doesn't hold up their end of the bargain. So that's where it starts. But you look at that, 2 winnable games at home. At Houston, winnable. Houston looked like they fell back down to earth this weekend. At West Virginia, tough to say winnable. Team-wise, if you played them on a neutral site, neutral field, very winnable. Never won in Morgantown. There's something about Morgantown. And then Kansas at home, and they're in some type of way right now as well. And I don't think it gets better for them this week as they take on Kansas State on either Thursday or Friday. It's not a Saturday game, I don't think. So I was worried that Kansas game could be, their opportunity, the Jayhawks' opportunity to get in the Big 12 championship game. Obviously, that is kaput. That is nowhere close. But there is no game on that schedule that I say Baylor's got no shot. The way we did, leading up to the Iowa State game, leading up to the BYU game to some extent, leading up to the Utah game, I didn't think they really had a shot. There's none in the next 5 games that I say Baylor's got no chance. No chance in that one. And in fact, I'll go as far as saying there is no game on that schedule that I feel as bad about from a Baylor standpoint as I did leading into this Tech game. And they won it by 24 points. Start telling your kids about the 8-4 Baylor Bears. You tell me in the comment section below, how far do you think that they could ride this thing? Did it give you the hope? Because honestly, I mean, I know, obviously I wouldn't have been saying this last week or 2 weeks ago, and I don't want to sound like they're going to, just automatically go and win 9 games. It's still about getting to 6. But we said that because we hadn't seen them win a conference game in a year. Now we've seen it. We've seen the blueprint of how Baylor's going to win a game and and we've seen them do it in a conference game on the road to add to it. So I think that should give you confidence. And I know there'll be plenty of people in the comments that are like, oh, here we go, copium. And apparently I'm a Dave Aranda simp. I don't know. I didn't know we use that word anymore. But I appreciate you guys in the comments who follow along every day. Truly, I really do. But let me know what you think down in the comments. Am I overreacting? Or do you say, yeah, Cam, 8 wins, 9 wins down the road here, and Dave Aranda saves his job and everyone goes home happy? Let me know. Let me know down in the comment section below what you think about the Sawyer Robertson, Josh Cameron connection, where hopefully they can get to in the annals of Baylor history. And should they use some more Jeff Grimes plays? Just a little mixed in there. Let me know down in the comments. Be sure to like and subscribe. Again, getting very close to that 3,000 subscribers number. And a lot of you listening, always more than half of you listening, are not subscribed. So you loyal fans, you everydayers, go tell your friends, hey, just hit the subscribe button and then ring the notification bell to get notified every time we're dropping a video on YouTube or wherever you get your podcast. We have tomorrow maybe my favorite interview that I've ever done for Locked On Baylor. It's right up there. And it will be, you're going to love it too. It might be a little bit of a long one tomorrow, but it is going to be so worth it. We will see you then on Locked On Baylor.